asked us this morning to come up and share about a project that we've been working on this year. And it's called MissionTREK. How many of you have heard of it before? I think we talked about it last year at Faith Camp. Anyways, a couple years ago, Brenda Walsh with 3AB and Kids Network contacted my dad and asked for programming. And my dad said, we don't have time, we don't have programming. It's not really a possibility. But we started toying with the idea, and at the GC session in 2015, someone donated $5,000 towards that project. And so we're like, well, $5,000 is not enough to do a TV show, but it's something. And it's been donated toward that project, so maybe God wants this to happen. So we started praying about it, and God provided enough money. We raised like $19,000, and we went and shot this show in February of this year, January actually. So I'm gonna play the open. It's taken a while to get everything going and edited and stuff. So, but I have the open here. It's not finished, but it's a start. So I'm gonna play that, and then I'll ask them some questions and stuff.
Could a young person make any difference?
My name is Marianne.
And I'm Lillian.
We wanted to find out.
Join us on our journey
To discover the culture,
the lifestyle,
the need,
and the mission.
Welcome
to MissionTREK.
So that is the start of the show, and that's open. So where did we go?
We went to Thailand and Cambodia.
Okay.
We traveled around, visited different projects that are going on, and saw a lot of stuff.
How long was the trip?
It was about 2 months. We were filming for 6 weeks.
6 weeks?
Yeah.
Okay. So this show is basically following them around Asia, or Thailand and Cambodia specifically, and seeing what life is like, not only being a missionary, but living over there. Because, here in America, we don't really experience what it's like to live over there. It's scary and stuff, right? So over there, the goal of the show is to show what it's like to live over there, be a missionary, what the culture's like, the food, different things about the experience.
What the needs are.
Yeah, what the needs are, and just the whole experience of being a missionary. What did you guys think of that, the whole trip? How did it help you see?
Well, it was a huge blessing, and
I think we were just able to be really firsthand see a lot of stuff that we've seen before, but actually we were actually able to do stuff. Like we went and we helped out at the slum with Josh Bowder and stuff, and I don't know, it was kind of
instead of just going and visiting the projects, you're able to be a part of the different projects and connect with the people.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. So this is going to be coming out in the spring of 2018, I hope, if we can get everything done. So please keep it in your prayers. We've got a long ways to go. We still have to build the set, record on the set, and finish editing everything.
So we just ask that you would pray that the whole show, the message that we're trying to bring out, would be put together by God and not by us, because it's really challenging. And so just pray with us that it's His show and it's used for His glory.
Thank you.
I don't normally have any kind of electronic assistance, so I'm not used to it. So I apologize for those of you who were here yesterday morning and felt that I was yelling, because usually I have to project in order to have people hear me. So we got another opportunity to come up and share, and my wife really wants to share something, but I know that we didn't have time for question and answers after our first presentation, and so I didn't know if there anybody had any questions, we could open up this time for that. If anybody had any questions about the project, about the center, what we're doing there in Bangkok. Did anybody have any questions?
Do you guys have a website? I think I missed that if you do.
You didn't miss that because I didn't share that. We do have a newsletter blog site that would be at the well. Our last name is Atwells, so it's at the well ministries at wordpress.com. Org? Which one's the free one? Com? One of them. Either at the well, ATTHEWELL, at the well ministries, spelled out, at WordPress, and I don't remember which one's free, if it's .com or .org. I think it's .com. So at thewellministries.com, and you can go on there, and we have, it's mainly just for our newsletter, and so it's, you can go all the way back and read from the beginning. And I recommend you do, because we didn't get to share like half of the stories of how God was able to bring us into Thailand, all of the things that he did. So our path to the plane is the first installment in that newsletter, and that kind of gives a background of just all that God did to really bring us to the place that we are today. Anybody else have any questions?
Hello. There we go. Could you share a little bit more about what's on your shirt? Is it F5 challenge?
F5 challenge.
You
Sure.
said it was in the United States. I saw the bookmarks, but I've never seen it before.
Yeah. So F5 challenge. You guys are familiar with Martin Kim, who came and was speaking earlier in the week. His brother, twin brother Calvin Kim, actually lives over on the west side in Olympia, Washington, and he has a real passion for fitness and getting outdoors and exercise. And what he shared with us is he said, I've been married for so long that I forgot how lonely the young people in the church are. And he said, we wanted to try and set up something where they could have something to do, some kind of a social interaction, but it wasn't like, well, you know, we have to go do this worldly thing in order to be able to have some kind of a social life. You know, they said, what are you going to do? Are you going to go up to GYC and be like that creepy guy that walks up to the group of girls and says, hey, how you doing? I'm so-and-so. And they said, that's not going to happen. And so they tried to set up something where they could have young people interacting together in a fun outdoor setting. But it's also, let me try and back up a little bit. So what they do is, it initially started here in the Seattle area, and it was just to get people together. They do a lot of little local events. Like every Sabbath afternoon, they have a hike that they go somewhere close by. They hike up to, when we were over there a couple of weeks ago, we hiked up to Twin Falls. You know, just a short drive and then just an easy hike. But you get out in nature. There was a group of maybe, I don't remember, I think there was like 19 of us or something. And, you know, it was just an easy thing to get out and do. And then afterwards somebody opened their home. We went to their house. We had a little meal together, fellowship, a short worship. It was just kind of an easy thing where it was a way to get the young people connected together, but it also was an opportunity where it was an easy witnessing opportunity. It wasn't overtly, you know, come to my church, come to this series that I'm doing. It's, hey, why don't you come on a hike with us and our friends? And they come and they hang out, and he said that the number one comment they get from non-Christians who come is, wow, you know, this was really fun, and like, I've always kind of thought you had to drink or something to have fun. Calvin is really energetic and really into games, and so he always has like different game night activities. And, you know, these people really are having fun, and they're enjoying it, and they're like, you know, and we're sober, and we're just, you know, it's very wholesome fun. And then once a year, they plan one big event. So like last year they went to the Grand Canyon, they did a rim to rim to rim. So they did a run all the way around. But each big event has 5 categories. So you can do the F1 challenge. If you're like me, you have small children, you can't go running around the whole Grand Canyon. But you can do an easy walk, you know, down to the base or down to this water area. They have the F2 that's a little bit harder, so on up until F5, which is like this extreme type challenge. So it's something for everyone. People, you know, if they say, well, I'm not very fit and I'm not very active, it's like, that's fine. You can come and you can do the number 1 challenge. There's something for everybody. And so it's just a kind of like a social type group bringing people together with the center being Christ. It's actually now grown like super fast. Right now, there's a chapter in South Africa that is actually very large. It's growing all the way across the United States. Every single event they do, more people join. So like if I was going to do a marathon, disconnected from the group, but I decided I'm going to go run a marathon. Well, I get my F5 challenge shirt, and you get out and you start talking with people, and they say, well, what is this? What is this F5 challenge? And a lot of times, it'll be a few people from the group. You know, in Spokane, they had Bloomsday. There was a few of them that came together. They're all wearing the same shirt, and they're running, and they're talking to people about it. And people say, well, that sounds really cool. I want to get involved in that. And so it starts growing, and you have these non-Christians also coming, and they're interacting with Christians, and kind of like what I shared yesterday morning, they're through building relationships and friendships with people. People are coming to see Christ lived out and see that maybe there is something that we can do. Maybe there is a way to actually have a fun and a happy life without just trying to find it in movies or in alcohol or in this or in that. But they're seeing the reality of joy in Christ. So Jessica shared a little bit about, we're taking that concept and using it so that it's like a club. And so it's something that people can join. Thai people love anything American. They worship American movies, and so they want to do anything that's like American. So the fact that this began in America, the F5 group is actually planning a mission trip to come over. Many of them are medical, dental professionals, and so they're planning to try and come over and do a medical dental clinic to serve in our community from the center, and then plan a challenge where they can interact with the people and we can kind of spend some time with them. And so that idea that these people are not only joining a group and a club, but they're joining something that's American, I mean, that's a really big draw for a lot of people.
By the way, I think it's .org.
Oh, okay. Thank you. For the website, that was a clarification that would be .org. Is that the only thing you were saying? Oh, okay. Anybody else have anything?
Oh, hi. We have been interested in the project you have in Bangkok, as everybody else is, I'm sure. And I see that you're really making strides to remodel the place. And I'm wondering how much that costs and where you got the money.
That's a good question. What's that? You can come up. How much has that cost? So, roughly at this point, we're at roughly, with lawyer fees, rent that we've been paying on the building, the renovations that have been happening, we're right at about, I think we're at closer to 45. I think we're at around $45,000. Where did we get that money? That's a great question. We would wake up in the morning and we would have an email, and they would say, and John, being the way that he is, he would send an email and it would say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that we got a donation for you last night. And then that was it. But then because he was awake still and I was asleep and not reading it, he would get so impatient. He'd say, aren't you curious for how much it's for? And then, so I'm waking up and I'm getting this series of messages that he's like, and then the next one, it'll be a message that I can't see any of it. He hits return all the way down to the bottom, and I scroll down, and it would say, it was for $10,000. And that was from a girl in her 20s who is a teacher at a college. But God put upon her heart that she was to support the work in Thailand. And I had talked with her a little bit. She was asking me all these weird questions, like, so what happens if you're done with this project? What happens if you have to leave? Who's going to take over this project? And who's going to do all these things? And I'm listening to her, I'm responding to her question. I'm going, why do you care about all these weird things? And then she sent this donation. And I wrote to her, and she said, well, that's why I wanted to know all those things. I didn't want to put a bunch of resources into a project that didn't really have much planning or didn't have any of this stuff. So where does the money come from? It comes from God. I mean, we shared that yesterday, Proverbs 19:17. If we give to God whatever we have, he takes that upon himself as his debt, and he provides what we need. So, yeah, we're still a ways out from completing, but God is providing, people who are able to help with their skills and just different things so that we can bring the project to a full completion as far as, completion in an opening. So,
So how much do you need to complete the building?
That's sometimes a little bit harder to estimate because my skin tone often designates a higher wage to the people working. As far as right now, the most recent numbers that I put together, to finish the building, we still have to replace the windows, we have to install air conditioning, we have to paint the inside and outside, as well as some furnishings for the first floor. We have all the furnishings for the restaurant, but then we still need all of the equipment for the kitchen. We're looking at roughly $30,000. The climbing wall, in our estimation, I think is roughly around 45 more. So I'm not a
About $75,000.
$75,000. But you can. Yeah, I guess that's a good point. But yeah, God has the account balance fit for that. So we just move forward as we have money, and sometimes as we don't. And when we do need it, God is there. So
things are a lot more expensive in the cities, and everyone says, "Oh, you go to Thailand and it's so cheap. You can get a massage for $5." Well, wages are very inexpensive in Thailand, but the import tax is outrageous. It's about 3 times the amount for something you want. If you pay, I don't know, $100 for a fridge here, you pay $350 for a fridge there because they didn't make it there. And Thailand wants you to support their economy, so anything you bring in, it goes really high priced. And we were talking to friends who you were in Chiang Mai, right? They said they paid 1,500 baht a month for their house. We pay 15,000 baht a month for our house, and it's a beautiful house. It's the most inexpensive one on the block, and people can't believe how little we pay. So we have a great deal, is what I'm trying to say. So things are exponentially more in the cities, and we've just waited too long as a church to work them, and now things are really expensive, and it's hard to get things delivered in, and they charge accordingly. So wages are cheap. The person you pay to do your massage is cheap, but anything you buy or import, and then your skin color tax, it really goes up. So, but God has the money, and He wants to bless people willing to give it. I know that's for sure. So that gal who Brian was talking about, we've had a couple of other donors. We had one donor, they gave us like $19,000 in one lump. But that gal who was in her 20s who gave 10, I couldn't believe it. That hit me really hard because, I'm just out of my 20s now, but I thought, would I have done that? Would I have given $10,000? Think of what you could invest in. Think of the debts you could pay off. You could buy a car, but you could get a house and then get return off it or whatever. But, she is thinking about her investments. She's thinking about the right investments. She's investing in heaven, and she'll be richer there. She got a good inheritance to look forward to. So that was really impactful for me. Thank you. You know who you are. I'm sure you're watching. So
I was curious if you guys have an opening date.
I wish. We're just we've been going back and forth about that because of the way our building is set up. You have to walk through each floor to get to the top. Well, the top one is the climbing wall and would be the last one done and probably kind of noisy during construction. So do we want that noise and foot traffic and construction going on while we're doing the business below, the restaurants and things? And we kind of asked Thai people and kind of polled them. They said, no, wait until it's all done. Because we brought Thai friends there to come and look at the place, and they're like, you saw the pictures, the renovation being done. They're like, why'd you bring us here? It's like 20% done. This is terrible. It's never going to open. And, visualizing something is kind of difficult or new, seeing the renovations in their mind complete, whereas we bring Westerners there. We took Kelly there well before any of that renovation was done. He's like, this is a great spot. It's going to be amazing. And, he couldn't wait to see it completed. He could see it in his mind's eye. But so we're waiting. So our Thai friends, if they see something incomplete, it's very hard to see it in a completed fashion in their mind. So I think it would be better. They've told us they think it would be better if we just waited till it was all done to do a grand opening.
And they shared that if a Thai person comes and they don't see something that's for them, they're not going to come back again. Even if you say, like, this next thing is going to open up, if they come in and they say, oh, well, yeah, this is this, and I'm not really interested in that, and they go away, they won't come back, even if you say, no, we have this new thing open. And so it was, There's also impossibilities of there's certain walls that have to go in for the restaurant, and if we put those in, then we can't carry the materials to the upper floor because there's not enough space. So right now, I've projected November. The builder told me he would be done in April, so I put out that we would be opening in April. And the last week of April, I asked him, when are we going to be done? And he said, the end of April. And I looked at the building and I said, we have no electricity, we have no water, we only have half of the tile down. It's 15,000 square feet. I said, so you're going to be done with this week? And he said, oh, yes, we will be finished. And it wasn't until the first week of May that he admitted he would not be finished at the end of April. And so I asked him when, and he said, very soon. So, so I put November as our open date with the idea that we'll be done sooner than that. But instead of putting another one here and then having to push it back again, I would rather go out here and then come back. So right now our tentative opening is November, but we don't have an exact date on that.
Then I had one more question. And I haven't been out of the United States to be any way the way you guys are doing. But how come you don't buy, if you need a refrigerator, buy a refrigerator there? Why does it have to be imported?
No, we bought the fridge there. The thing is, it's not only just about import tax, but it's also about supply and demand. You understand the principle of supply and demand. So a lot of things that we use here and that we now have in our home as trying to make a comfortable type thing are things that they don't really use. And so if they're not using it, it's a much higher price. A bed here, the same bed here that you could buy for a couple $100 is like $1,000 there because they sleep on mats on the floor. I mean, even though it's a big city and it's really, the majority of people are still sleeping on mats on the floor because it's cheaper. And so that was a struggle for me. We had to buy a bed, and I bought this cheap bed, and we're sleeping in it. It's like, our backs are hurting, and this is like really bad, and we need to buy a better mattress. But it's like, you want $1,000 for a mattress, and it's like, here maybe that's not so bad, but over there when minimum wage is $9 a day, and you're like, I'm spending $1,000 on a mattress. We did not buy a $1,000 mattress, but so it's supply and demand. The things that we've greatly reduced the comfort things that we live with. But we lived the first 8 months without a refrigerator, and then we said, going to the market twice a day so that we can have our fruit and stuff like that. It's stressing out on her. She has to walk down to the market and come back carrying the food, and then go back again and plan out carrying the food and the baby. And so it was like we have to step out and buy some of these comfort things, even though we were trying to live more like they did. And so we purchased a refrigerator. We purchased some of these things, but those things are, luxuries.
We didn't have a refrigerator for the first 8 months, and then we went to Chiang Mai, and then the baby started eating, and I needed to have like little leftovers and things for him. And so someone gave us a fridge. It had been passed down through a bunch of missionaries, and it was a little college dorm fridge, and it didn't stay closed, and so they, rigged it up. They attached a bungee cord to the back of it, drilled a hole in the front, and then the bungee cord came around front and hooked in and kept it closed. And so, yeah, child-proofed perfectly for a 1-year-old, but you had to keep it closed for 24 hours to get a tray of ice. But it was a great child-proofing thing, and so you learn. I remember we had the motorbike forever, and we just got a truck last year, and we were driving in that truck, and we had the AC on. Baby was in the back, and I said, I feel so rich right now. It was like the best luxury in this 20-year-old blue truck, But it's amazing what you learn to appreciate and see differently. Yeah, it's your guys' old, and it was missionary truck before that too, so it keeps on going. So, can we answer that question? So, yeah, it's just things it shocked us too, because when we were budgeting prices here and what it would be like there. Surely it'll be the same or less because it's so cheap.
We went over $20,000 with the idea that that's going to carry us through 2 years because everything is so cheap, and then and while things are cheap, getting when you go on vacation, you're not furnishing a house. And so here, oftentimes, like when I moved out from my parents' house, well, they gave me a lot of their old furniture and old things. When we got there, we had nothing. We first moved there, 8 months, we had a furnished apartment. But then we moved up north, and we had nothing. It was an empty apartment. And we lived in it that way. We bought beds, and that was it. And people came over, and we would sit on the floor, and we had one, card table thing that we sat at for dinner. That someone had given us. Yeah, and we kind of borrowed chairs from the church. We lived at the church in the pastor's house. When we moved to Bangkok, we moved into a house that had nothing in it, and all we had was beds. And so we still lived like that for a while, but then we started our ministry of ministering to our neighbors and inviting them over started happening. Well, we live in what they consider an upper-class neighborhood. I mean, we have a separate house. It's not an apartment. We have a yard that's smaller than this.
We have maid quarters.
And so this is like an upper-class neighborhood, and they're coming over, and they're like, oh, you have no furniture, and everyone's kind of looking like weirdly like, what is this? And so
The ex-prime minister lives on our road.
yeah, right. The former prime minister lives on our street. So I mean, it was very weird. And so we said, you know what? Like, this is again in our minds like a luxury that we don't really need. That quote yesterday: the resources given above and beyond the actual necessities of life are given for a man to bless others. And so it's like, well, these things aren't necessities of life. We've been sitting on the floor for over a year now. We can keep sitting on the floor. But it was like our interaction with people in the ministry. People were kind of looking like, what's going on? Like, you're American, you're rich. Why are you sitting on the floor? And so we had to become, we still didn't even have a couch. We bought little chairs at IKEA, where it was like, well, it's something.
I had to talk him into those too. I was pregnant, and I was like, come on, my back hurts. I need something.
But furnishing a house, is something much more expensive that you don't ever think about when you're on vacation somewhere.
Praise God for IKEA. Cheap stuff. They're in Thailand. So, yeah, love IKEA. So, yeah.
So if there aren't any more questions, Dean has a question.
So all your labor has to be done by local people?
As far as renovation or as far as work or both? So the question was our work has to be done, labor has to be done by local people. As far as Westerners owning a company, and we didn't really talk about that much, but I'm the sole owner, 100% owner of a Thai company, which is kind of a weird thing for them. But there's legal requirements. So for every foreign work permit that we offer, which I have one, we have to have 4 full-time Thai employees, and we have to have the equivalent of $60,000 US in registered capital for the company. That's not a fee that we pay. We just have to either show that money in the bank or show receipts where that money went for the business. And so yeah, we have to have 4 Thai workers for every 1 work permit. So I have a work permit. My wife is just a dependent under me, so she can't work actually. But yeah, so the majority of the work by law needs to be done by local workers. But the whole purpose of what we're trying to do, one thing that we realized is that if this ministry was based upon us, if we were the key components in this ministry, it was already being established to fail. Because we are not a constant there. We are not concrete, proven that we will stay there. The government tomorrow could say, you have to leave. All foreigners need to get out of the country, and we could be sent away. And if our ministry is based upon us, then it's shut down. We leave, it's done.
I worked at 8 different churches when I was Bible working, and every single church I saw the same thing happen. I had Bible studies, and when I left, they got dropped. There was nobody in the church invested in those Bible studies, and that was my fault, completely my fault, because I, from the get-go, did not push people hard enough or pray hard enough or whatever you want to call it to get my church members involved with those people, and then they get dropped. And so I think us not having anybody opening this giant community center sort of thing, we've learned, hopefully from our mistakes, that we have got to have the locals involved from the get-go. They have to have ownership in it, feel like they were a part of it from the ground up, and their ideas were important and are incorporated, and part of them is in it, so that they don't let it go if we ever get dropped. And the month we moved to Thailand, we were put under martial law. Our country's under martial law and has been for the past 3 years. And just under a year ago, the wonderful king died, who was a great humanitarian. And we're in a year of mourning right now for him. So you go to Thailand right now, and most people are still wearing 100% black. And just in respect of the king. And, like all the concerts were canceled for that year, or for that month at least. And even their giant 3-day Songkran, New Year's celebration, if you've ever been there, you know how much fun that is. That was totally muted this year. I mean, everything. And so they have a new constitution in place. The king's son is taking over, who doesn't seem to follow so much in his dad's footsteps. But the new regime has a new constitution to be put in place, and there will be some changes coming. And so they've always been very open to different religions, but there are things starting to happen in that country that are making the government think twice. And it seems to be in all Asian countries that Islam is creeping north. and they do it through the political system. And our Thai friends, I think, are going to be blindsided by some of the radical political views of some of our Muslim brothers and sisters, and they really don't know what's coming. They don't see that danger. My Thai neighbor who you saw us talk about, I took her on a walk, and at the end of our road, there's an apartment complex, and there's some Pakistani Christian refugees that we're friends with there. So we stop and say hi, and we keep walking, and I wanted to get a feel for what Thai people thought about this situation. So I started asking her. Here she is, 35, 36 years old, educated, college degree, comes from a wealthy neighborhood. You'd think she'd understand some things, right? She's a good one to get an idea of what's going on. And I said, so do you know why they're here? She said, no. And I said, they're from Pakistan. They're Christians, and they came here because the Muslims burned down their house, and they were scared for their lives, so they fled, and they're here. And she looked at me, why would they do that? Why would Muslims burn down her house? I don't understand. I said, well, Muslims don't care for other religions, whether you're Christians or idol worshippers or whatever, and they persecute them. And she speaks the best English that we found in Thailand, and she really didn't understand that word persecuted. And I told her, kind of tried to explain that in layman's terms, what that means. No clue. No clue that spirit is in Islam whatsoever. And there's two political parties. One of them is much more heavily influenced by the Muslims, and that's the one that's in power right now in influence, and that's who will be taking over, who's written the Constitution. So there's already been some things that the Adventist Church has been told. We're not allowed to speak out against any other religion, whether from the pulpit or in written form, which the great controversies being put out in Thai, which that wouldn't be allowed. We'd have to have some kind of permit or approval from the government to have any sort of meetings and this sort of thing. Who knows how much this is going to be enforced, because it's Thailand. Sometimes rules aren't really that enforced, but these are new rules that that Thailand has never heard of. So, the world's changing. The world's changing, and we are far behind in working the cities. Someone asked us, who's working with you over there besides Josh and you guys? You're looking at us, 15 million people. We really need some help. We really need prayer. We really need able bodies, willing people to come over and help. That's for sure.
So getting back to that point, the idea is to, as Jessica said, to equip and empower the local people, she said to give buy-in. We heard a story of a ministry happening in China. In Korea, there's a program, and I can't remember what it's called, where a church can decide, we are going to keep paying our pastor, we'll take the money from the conference for a pastor, but we're going to send that pastor and use that money to send him to a foreign mission field, so that we will just operate without a pastor, an elder-led church, and that pastor will go serve as a missionary. And so there was one pastor from Korea who was sent to China, and he had this desire or this burden to set up a center of influence as a restaurant in China. And so he went to this province, and he wanted to set up a pizza company. And so he had somebody come who had a successful pizza brand, and they said, if you are willing to use this for your ministry, I will give you my recipe for how to make these pizzas. And so he said, yeah, it's great. And so he gave it to him. He went up to China. He established this pizza company, and he had these 2 workers working for him. And he said he would go and he would look around, and they were always just doing just enough. They would leave stuff in the corner. They would sweep a little bit. They would clean up a little bit. But they weren't really invested in it. And he said that God gave him this idea, and he went to them one day and he told them, starting next year, you will no longer work here anymore, or you will no longer work for me. And they said, what? And he said, starting next year, you're going to be the owners of this company. He said, right now, I'm going to ask you to set aside this much money from your paycheck every month. I will set aside this much money from my money. And at the end of the year, this will be your company. And he said, and as soon as he did that, and he started training them on how to run the backside of the business and all of this, he said as soon as he did that, they were doing everything they needed to. They were on top of everything. They were really invested in it and trying to learn as much as they could and be involved as much as they could, because they had investment in it. They saw at the end of the year, this is going to be mine. And so I need to really know what I'm doing. And at this point now, he has 11. It's a branch that has 11 different restaurants, because he does this as he goes, and he gave it to them. He started another one in a different part. and did the same thing with those workers and moved on and did it in another part. And so this is the idea that we're trying to work with. We're setting up this using our interests and some various, in one sense, the reason why I feel like it's three different things, she says 3 centers of influence in one, is because it gives a broad idea. As Jessica mentioned, the Thai people sometimes have a harder time visualizing something. And so if we have multiple, illustrations of how this can work, our workers come in, we tell them that you're workers here, but the idea is that you are being trained to take over, and we will help you to set up your own somewhere else in this city, somewhere else in this country, so that they have ownership and investment in it, and they can take whatever they're passionate about. They don't have to set up a restaurant. They don't have to set up a climbing gym, but maybe they have a passion about something else. But they can learn the principles of how they can operate this business as a ministry. And so the idea is to just mainly get the local workers. We thought we were going over there to set up a training center in our minds. And then we surrendered that idea, and we said, we'll do a center of influence. And as it grew, we realized this is where the actual training happens. When you look at the ministry that Christ did, he didn't sit most of his time with his disciples and said, come over here and sit down, and let me teach you in a classroom how to do this. He said, why don't you come with me and watch how I minister to this woman? And as they watch and they see how he ministers to the woman at the well, they say, oh, okay. And maybe they get an idea that this is how we minister. And then he watches how he goes over and he ministers to the demoniac and how he ministers to this person. He sees, oh, there's not just one way to do it. We actually have to connect with people, and you're different from you. And so I can't use the same method necessarily to minister to you that I could to you. But if we see this model and how to work, and we learn through practical work, then the true interpretation of the gospel is brought about.
You guys saw Josh and his wife Chitlata Skyped in. This is actually how Chitlata was converted. She was a Buddhist. She's only been a Christian for maybe 5 years. And the way she became a Christian was she worked in hotel management, and she worked at a Christian hotel. And at that Christian hotel, they had Bible studies every Wednesday. Required, they had to be there. Mandatory Bible studies. And her boss was a Christian, and she learned about Christians through her friends and coworkers or whatever, and the principles there. And then when her husband of, I think, 10 or 11 years left her for another woman, and then I think her dad died, and within that same month, she was broken, and Buddhism offered her no comfort. But she had been hearing about Jesus for how many years at her required Bible studies at her work, and she gave her heart to Christ and became a Christian. So through the friends at work and her boss and her, this business as a ministry. And so that's kind of what our goal is too. We would love to hire, Christian workers, but you never know where someone is in their conversion or whatever. And so, mentorship is, I think, what Christ did. He took them alongside of him and worked for the people, and that's kind of what we're planning. We're going to be learning from them too, because we don't know how to reach the Thai people. We need both. We need each other over there. That's for sure.
I just want to say how much I appreciate what God is doing in Brian and Jessica's heart.
Me too.
I know some of you understand this and some of you may not understand, but back in 1975, 1 year out of college, is when I was brought in contact with our message and saw the beauty of it and became a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. Mm-hmm. Where Brian and Jessica are right now is the most incredible spot anyone could be in, because they are right next to a university. And university students are looking, searching, wondering about their future. What about their jobs? What about relationships? Everything in their lives are about learning and growing, and a lot of their lives are in upheaval because maybe mom has died, maybe dad is doing this, maybe there's things going on, maybe they don't have money. Everyone at the college level often is in some kind of a search. And, I'm preaching a little here. I know our church, little tiny church that it is in Athol, is helping support us. We have so much support. We just praise the Lord. And yet our little church would say, well, let's give $25 a month. How many of us here are giving? How many here are going to leave and not give anything? And there is such joy, not only in surrender, but joy in giving. And I know when we left the school where we were, and this is not a pat on my back, but the Myers family and the Dreher family gave everything in our homes to their ministry. Was that a sacrifice? We did it with joy, but it's just a little teeny bit of what they need.
We had a giant truck that I couldn't even fit on the road where our building is and had to unload it at my house with all of the things that were donated from them.
Our neighbors all of a sudden thought we were pretty rich because we had 3 of everything instead of nothing.
But what
the
a
Myers
joy.
and Dreyers left and gave us everything for this.
What a joy to give, but they need so much more. And if we could all in our hearts say, this is what I want to dedicate to God's kingdom and the growing of this ministry, let me just say this. We both have friends, the Atwells and the Dreyers and the Myers. We all have friends in Ayutthaya. They started studying the Bible with a lady. She was excited. She was enthralled with what she was learning about the Bible. And then the people, because this lady was maybe in her 40s, then the people said, you can't do this. We're a community. You can't study the Bible with these people. This is a community, and you're a part of us. And so they pulled her back in, and this lady lost the opportunity of giving her heart to Jesus. But at a college setting, that's not the same way. Because you may have 2 or 3 friends in your group as you study. You may have 4 or 5. But one person says, hey, let's go to the F5 challenge place. And they will all go as a group, and they will say, wow, this place is a great place. That's the beginning. The beauty and the joy of the college setting is that there's independence, and you don't have that town community saying, you can't do this. Those are Christians. You got to stay with us. They don't have that. And so what an incredible opportunity they have.
I think you'd agree with me, Daniel. You were a Bible worker, and so was I. And when you would knock on doors, the people I was most excited about meeting were those who were in transition.
Yeah.
Someone who had just had a death in the family, a birth, a marriage, a move, job loss, new job, rocking the boat of their usual norm.
Their life.
That's when people are open to change, because life isn't upheaval. Life is different. And that college age is a 4-year upheaval. Yeah. It's just, everything's different. You won't be here forever. You're willing to try new things. You're questioning your core beliefs, what you've been taught. Is it true? Or we're testing it. This sort of thing. We all know that's when people rebel. That's when all our kids rebel is college, right? It's because you're questioning everything.
You are.
And so I know that's why God led us to the college, the university. So
of all the places
transition.
The 2 of you could be, it is the most ideal spot.
Amen.
Because students are open to change and new things. So I just pray that not only here, but everyone can get behind this project and do as much as they can to see God's kingdom grow, because this is an opportunity and we don't want to let it pass. There's way too many opportunities around the world that have passed, and this is a tremendous opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Amen.
For everything, not just that comment.
I just wanted to say, it's just delightful to me to hear you guys talking and sharing your stories about, and each one of the missionaries, but your willingness to go, whether you were going to have to sleep on a mat or whatever, that just really touches my heart, because there truly is a joy in surrender. And the delight that it overrides everything. When your love for the Creator starts growing in your heart, it overrides the desire for comfort. It's so much more. And I remember being in college back east, and I was raised in the bush of Alaska, and the conference president was coming around, and he was interviewing a guy that was just graduating from theology, and I thought, wow, he's actually graduating, and he's, and he was ready for an adventure, he said. And they had all these empty missions in Alaska. And the conference president was all excited to talk to him. And he said, can I take my waterbed? And it was this village that was way up north, 80 miles, and anyway, he didn't go because he couldn't take his waterbed. And he came and talked to me about it, and I was like, dude, a waterbed? You don't want a waterbed. It's going to freeze.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Right? Like, you don't.
Ice bed.
Yeah, it's overrated. The waterbed is overrated. And he missed out on some major joy because he's all worried about his waterbed. And it's exciting to know that you guys are willing to go, whether you had furniture or not. And there's a delight in it that you can only know after you just go.
There's a freedom.
Yeah, huge freedom.
Everyone thinks missionaries are poor, and I think if you look at the debt to capital ratio, I think we're kind of rich in this country. You know, we're free from everything, free to go wherever God wants us. So,
when Dr. Dreyer just finished talking, I turned to Steve and I says, I think it's time to sing the doxology. And Steve turned to me and says, I think it's time to give some money.
Well, we still have a short message. God put a message on my heart to share. I'd like to share with us. If we're done with the question time, we'll end on a note. Probably. Sound good? Any other questions? I don't want to cut anybody off. All right, well, let's pray and just end on a spiritual note, okay? Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you so much for this faith camp and the faith that you give each one of us, because faith is a gift, and you give it to each one of us, and we're so blessed to be able to know you and trust you. Thank you for revealing yourself to us and how you've changed our lives, Lord. I pray for those who are here today, the missionaries in the foreign field and here in the homeland here. Lord, I pray that each one of our hearts would be encouraged to trust you more and to reach out to you more and ask for you to use us in a greater way. And Father, I pray now that you put your spirit in my heart and on my lips and help me to experience that true freedom and share openly, Lord. And honestly, I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.